A very, very warm welcome to everybody. And I would just like to take a few seconds of your time right at the beginning, because there are a number of new faces here. So not everybody knows what the famous worldwide global Pass It On network is all about. I am Moira Allen. I'm co-founder with Jan Hively, who will be joining us in a few minutes. And we started our global network about 13 years ago in Paris. And we just want to say very briefly that we are a global network, and that's what you're witnessing here tonight. And we're a network of positive aging pioneers advocating for older people and older people's rights, and contributing to how society is adapting or trying to adapt to the challenges of longevity, which touch every single aspect of life. Today we have pioneers, because that's what we call ourselves, with the contraction of our name. Pass It On Network comes down to Pion and pioneers in 65 countries around the world, all confronting the challenges of democratic changes. Our goal is to connect aging rights and advocates everywhere so that older people might age with rights and enjoy a better life. And to achieve this, we believe that one of the best ways is connecting and communicating with each other, to raise our voices wherever we can, and especially at the United Nations, where we're advocating for a formal convention on the rights of older people. We invite you to join the Pass It On network. The benefits of membership include meetings like the one we're doing now, meeting like-minded people from all over the world, and receiving our monthly Pioneers Gazette. And the very good news that I have is to say is that it's all free. At the moment, we've managed to do all of this free of charge, which is a bit of a miracle. So we hope to be able to carry on that way. And now, Osnat, I think I'm going to turn over to you for a brief introduction of today's session.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Osnat. I'm your partial host today, mostly on the technical side, but I want to, talking about technical side, what we are finding now is that we have an increasingly interconnected world. And we found also in the last few years that digital equity moved beyond luxury, having the latest piece of equipment, and it's now a fundamental right. And the thing that is very noticeable is that older people are at risk of being left behind due to the digitalization of everyday's life. I think everybody here, including this particular session, we're all on a digital piece of equipment connecting with each other. And if you don't have that, you're being excluded, left behind. We're going to hear more about this. It's a big concern, this thing of digital equity. All the people who do not have access are missing out on crucial services and also excluded from participating actively within their communities. So today, in this conversation, we are excited to bring perspectives on that from 3 highly populated and culturally diverse countries across the continent. We have India, we have Nigeria, and the US. And we're going to have also a tiny dip into Australia. And we'll explore what these different regions are tackling when it comes to this issue of digital equity, and have a nice global view of it. I am going to pass the lead to Bruce Frankel. Bruce is a journalist, author, entrepreneur, and a longtime pioneer, and he's going to introduce the panel and facilitate the conversation. Bruce, over to you.
Thank you, Osnat. Welcome, everyone. So happy to see you all. Just before I introduce, I just wanted to say something, which is that digital equality needs a definition. So the definition is that everyone deserves broadband access and the skills to use them. 2/3 of the world's population is currently using the internet. but that leaves 2.7 billion people who remain offline. And that means that 1 out of every 3 people cannot benefit economically, educationally, politically, socially, or otherwise from the internet. And so that's part of what we're addressing. I just wanted to frame it a little. So I'm going to ask Sonali first, then Bemiga and Richard to just please give brief introductions to yourself, and then we'll come back and get started. So, but Sonali, if you would please do the honors.
Thanks, Bruce. Hi, everyone. Well, good evening. It's actually quite late at night in India over here. So my name is Sonali. I head communications and the digital literacy program for urban elders at Helpage India. And I've been with the organization which works for the elderly for the past 23 years. So that's about all of me. And Bruce, I'll keep it short, I promise.
Great. Thank you very much, Sonali. Bemiga, if you would introduce yourself briefly.
Yeah, thank you so much. I am Bemiga Oyinlola. So my surname is Oyinlola. I'm from Nigeria. I'm a medical social worker from the Geriatric Center, which is the first geriatric center in the West Africa sub-region, and currently undergoing my PhD at McGill School of Social Work in Canada. So I'm very passionate about how we include older adults in digital technology and how they utilize it for their own safety and for their own needs. So I'm so much glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Richard, if you would introduce yourself. And I just want to interpose one thing. I was reading a book last week called Ageless Marketing. It was written about 15 years ago. And in its introduction, it thanked Richard. And at that time, it called Richard the most knowledgeable person about things internet for older adults. So please introduce yourself, Richard.
Well, good morning from Silicon Valley, California, or good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you are. As Bruce said, I've been working on this field for about 30 years. I was a young man when I started, and now I'm one of the target audiences, having turned 80 this year. So I have a fairly long perspective, but am still working, and the problems still remain, and the challenges still remain, which I'll talk about a little later.
Great. Thank you, Richard. So Sonali, if you'll be kind enough to take it away and introduce us to what your organization is doing and the issues in India.
Thanks, Bruce. So like I said, I work for Helpage India. We work, for the elderly. Helpage started in about 1978, and initially it started to serve the disadvantaged elderly, that is the poor elderly. As time moved on, and India got digital, and India is hugely digital today. We realized that there was an audience, there was an urban audience who had the money, who also had the time, but they did not. But they were not able. They were not digitally abled. Social isolation was a huge thing. So I'm going to quickly take you through, a small presentation that I have, and then we'll get into a discussion after that. Just give me 1 second. I'll just share my screen. Can you all see it?
Yeah, we see it fine.
Yeah,
no
great. Thanks. Okay, great. So our focus largely has been, the most nascent or the earliest program that we have is the digital literacy program for elders. And this is a robust program that, we run across India for rural as well as urban. We started at about 2015. We decided to find out what is the situation of urban elderly, in India. So in India, about only 4% of India's elderly really use the internet. 60% of the urban elders in India, they use smartphone devices. That's the primary medium of digital communication. Most of them don't have tabs or computers or laptops for that matter. Of course, when the pandemic hit, the want really became a need to learn, because we were in lockdown. The elders were used to going to the bank. They were used to going and paying their electricity and water bills, at their offices. but they could not step out and they could not access their finances. So they had a problem in accessing essential goods and services. 61% of people felt confined and isolated. Isolation was a huge thing during the pandemic. And it is safe to presume that, if they had access, if they had the knowledge, the digital knowledge, life would have been a little bit more bearable, Of course, when it comes to older women, the reality is a little harsher. That even though, in 2015, the Indian government came out with an amazing program called Digital India, and India has boomed digitally, but older people, somewhere get left behind. And if you look at these figures, I interact a lot with senior citizens, and I ask them when we conduct these workshops that who teaches you at home, and actually maximum of them have been self-taught. Their children have given them the devices, but unfortunately they haven't given them the time, and that is where the challenge has been. A lot of the older people tell us that our children are busy. In India, a lot of adult children live with their parents. It's just the way culture is. Of course, we are now breaking down into nuclear families, but the visits with older people, the living in joint families, it's quite big here. So, but they don't have the time, and so when we asked them, they said that we self-taught ourselves as much as we could, and of course, the most popular device was the smartphone device. Second, careers. A lot of elders at 60 you retire. But in 1947, really, you were when a 60-year-old in 1947 and a 60-year-old today and plus, there's a huge amount of difference. You're far more able, you're far more younger, more agile, and you're technically retired, but you're not retired, if you know what I mean. So there a lot of senior citizens come back with saying that we've reached the age of retirement, but we don't want to retire. So there is this whole need for a second career. A lot of 71% of India's elders are not working. 36% are willing to work, and they want to work for as long as possible. 40%, really want to learn new things. But unfortunately, 71% of elders do not have access to smartphones. And those who do have access use it for the most basic things like for calling purposes, some to social media. There's banking transactions are very minimal. When we asked the seniors that, what is it that you want to learn? The top 5 demands were, I want to use how to use WhatsApp. It's a social connect, app, connects us all. I want to know net banking. I want to do digital payments through Paytm, which is very popular in India. I want to know how to book a cab. I don't want to be dependent on my child to ask them. I want to know how to pay my bills without asking someone to do it for me. And while in rural India, the picture is a little different. In urban India, there is a need to learn, but in rural India, it also becomes a need for survival. Because you have access, the poor elderly, they need access to government schemes because those government schemes give them benefits. If they don't have online access, they can't register. They don't have online ID applications. They have a very popular ID card, which is called the Adler card, which is sort of like mandatory for most elders across all generations, for that matter. So if they have access to online, they can register for these schemes, get the benefits and the discounts. When COVID hit us, the government had released a COVID app, and you had to register, or walk into the closest COVID, vaccination center. A lot of older people were not in a position to walk to the center, so they needed to do it online. And for that, it was really interesting to see, how the vaccination app, really became popular. For rural elderly, it also becomes a means to livelihood. Nearly 70% of India is, we have an agricultural country, very, very strong. So for farmers, when they have access to the internet, they can assess weather conditions, learn new methods of irrigation, of organic farming, use the latest technology, know what is happening globally across. One thing I would really like to share is that, when I run the digital literacy program, and we presume that when COVID happened, the idea of the digital literacy program is to get everybody online. And we decided that we will shift the classes which were happening physically in a room to the online mode. But how do you teach an online mode when your target audience is not really online savvy? But the senior citizens surprised us. They got their children, they pulled them from their work from home rooms and said that, I don't care, there's a class happening. You have to get me online on the Zoom class and I'm going to get on. And the response we got, was amazing. So it also, it's a learning, it's a constant learning that the need to learn is so immense, but, there needs to be a platform for that. Of course, digital safety. I mean, cybercrime, I think, is one of the most scariest things today across all generations. But for the senior citizens, they are the most vulnerable. I speak to a lot of senior citizens. They tell me, beta, they tell me that, I've clicked on this. I got a link for that I'm going to win a lottery. And I clicked on it and suddenly they could access my, my password. They could access my email. They could access my bank account. So, we at HelpAge India, we are right now actually doing a digital safety program for about 50,000 senior citizens, across India, where, if some of the topics that you're looking at on the screen is what we are teaching them. Because for them, it has become vital because all their hard-earned life savings are lying in the bank. And it just takes one click and one wrong link to, lose all your savings. So that's something that we're really, really focusing on because it is the need of the hour. Of course, we're doing it across 16 project locations, across the country. We're a fairly vast country. And I think the amazing part of this is the sheer outreach. You can see there's a young man teaching an older woman, it's a digital literacy guidebook, safety guidebook. A lot of them, after the workshop, they say that, it takes us time to process. Can you give us something that we can go back home and really sit down and read? So what we do is we share them the workshop YouTube links, so they can look at it at leisure when they go back home. We give them, the hard copy of the book so that they can go back home and again, look at it at leisure. And of course, if they want to give us a call, they just call us up and say that I'm stuck here. Can you help me out? This is a little, case story of a lady who, was a part of a digital safety training program. I'll just quickly.
इसकी हमें बहुत ज़्यादा ज़रूरत थी, खास तौर से मुझे। सबसे अच्छा ये था कि जैसे आपके जो वीडियोस हैं उसमें आप हमको प्रैक्टिकली दिखा भी रहे हो, तो उसे हमें देख के समझ आ रहा है और उसको आप फिर मतलब इलैबोरेट करके बता भी रहे हो। वो चीज़ थोड़ी धीरे समझ आती है, पर मुझे अच्छा लगता है सीखना। आज हम लोग को बहुत ज़रूरत है क्योंकि आज जितने स्कैम होने लगे हैं ना, मैं खास तौर पे मेरे लिए भी इसीलिए कि मेरे बच्चे अपने पास कुछ नहीं रखते और मुझे फ़ोन को टच करने में किसी भी लिंक वगैरह को बहुत डर लगता है कि अरे ज़रा सा कुछ और बेचारों की अमानत और निकल जाएगी।
So that was one lady, who had actually, talked about that she nearly lost her savings because of, pressing on a link. And she's really scared at times when a link comes. So she just avoids it altogether. I think one of the things that also came was, isolation. That was a huge thing during the pandemic. A lot of, a lot of older people, they had their children living abroad. Their grandchildren were staying away or in a different state. They could not call them. They were not digitally savvy that they could, make a video call or even make a Skype call for that matter. So they were just locked in. They could not access, telemedication. They did not know how. And if, God forbid, they had COVID, they were stuck, in a loop where, they just couldn't get out and there was, no way out. So, and so we looked at, to beat the isolation, we started doing, some online concerts at some of the old age homes. And the residents thoroughly enjoyed it because it was literally bringing music home, reconnecting with the world outside. I think the need of the hour are tech innovations, telemedicine, teleconsultancy. Having gadgets is great, but they need to be made elder friendly. For example, maybe the buttons are a little bigger. Maybe that, things are not that fast, when you change from one page to another. Online webinars, for learning and interacting, elder friendly apps. We don't have too many layers and clicks to make it very cumbersome for the older person. And of course, nothing can be done if people don't invest in this. So funding for elder tech, age tech, I think is the need of the hour. And need to adapt. It's an AI world of gaming and chatbots. And, we need to even adapt technology, make sure that the Alexas of the world, get when we're trying to talk to them, understand, what we're trying to say to them, adapt to our needs. So, I think I'm going to stop right there. I'm just going to leave you last with one of the most beautiful programs that today is incidentally International Grandparents Day. And I just want to wish everybody out there. And we recently launched, really ran a program called the Digital Gurukul program. And the idea of this program was to get school children connected with senior citizens. The idea was to get them in a room together and you have the school children spending time with older people and teaching them how to use their smartphones. And when you bring the two generations together, honestly, magic happens. We had children crying after the workshop. We had elders beaming after the workshop. So it was just not about learning. It was just a beautiful, emotional connect that was made. So I'm just going to leave you with that. Just give me 1 sec.
बच्चा बना दिया भगवान को खूब लंबी उम्र दे ये सारे ब्राइट है और इनके चेहरे दे आर हीरोज ऑफ द नेशन
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sonali. That was great. Great overview.
Thanks so much.
Really wonderful. So, Bemiga, if you would please present for us, we'd appreciate it. Thank you.
So I'm deeply honored and delighted to welcome you all. And then I feel so privileged to be presenting to colleagues and also older adults who I consider my father, mother, and people I respect so much. And as Maureen actually said, I mean, you guys are pioneers and I respect you so much. This topic is of importance to me, and I so much owed it with passion as a young person. I clocked 33 in February 17. And then speaking about digital technology, I think I've been using it. I'm one of those generation of individuals who have been using it both positively and negatively. And in this era where digital technology have actually also become an integral part of our daily life, I think it's very important for us to actually address it. So today I will be presenting and also showing us some of the current digital landscape for older adults in Nigeria by also exploring some of the challenges, older adults, which I support at the Chief Tonian Geriatric Center, they go through and some of those opportunities that lies ahead. And through this presentation, I think I aim to also foster some deep understanding and conversation around how to improve on digital equity, because a whole lot of things have actually happened post and pre-COVID. So what can we do as Pass It On Network? And as a young person, I really want to learn on how to talk to colleagues as well as tech individuals in the field of digital technology in Nigeria and as well as across African region. Just a bit of introduction and a background. Older adult globally has been resistant to the adoption of technology, which Sonali have actually mentioned, compared to younger generation. But this trend is gradually changing. And the availability of personal computers, cell phone, laptops, as well as tablets and all other devices have really facilitated the growing number of usage of technology among older adults, including what we call information communication technology like the internet. There is an evidence which have shown that older adults are increasingly using it in the global south, like Nigeria. Evidence from the National Bureau of Statistics for Nigeria, actually in 2020, before COVID was declared in Nigeria, indicated that more than previous years, older adults have started adopting the use of technology, especially those above the age of 55 years. And older persons, I mean older adults, which I will be sticking to, are not the only social group at the lower end of digital divide across the world. As studies have actually shown that there is low internet usage among people with lower educational attainment, as well as those who has low income, and those who are from single parent and also heads of household. And it has double problem, especially for older adults residing in Nigeria, because more than 60% of Nigerian older adults reside in rural community, which makes it very, very difficult for them to have access to digital technology. Yet, these very precious group of individuals may also fall apart in terms of disproportionate digital exclusion. And given that those multiple complexity, it makes it very difficult for them to actually utilize technology. Take a look at the picture which I have here. You could see the exponential increase in the internet usage over time between 1991 till 2022. And also time spent on the internet, you would discover that about those between the ages of 55 to 64 years actually now have started utilizing technology, including internet. In sub-Saharan African countries, the use of technology among older adults is still deficient and is still at the infancy stage. I mean, when I say infancy stage, a lot of older adults in Nigeria specifically and some other African countries still do not have access to internet, not to now talk of smartphone, not to talk of some technological appliances. So, and it's very, very difficult for us to actually bridge that gap. So first of all, let's start conversation about how do older adults have, what's the level of access to internet? Then we can now start talking about access to a smartphone, access to high functioning technology. So, and then we can now start talking about awareness. So it has its own level, higher level of complexity. So most recommendations from studies which I have located when I was doing my research in Nigeria actually indicated that most existing approaches which has been utilized in the global south, in the global north, like the US and Canada, are ill-suited to cultural concerns of older adults in countries like Nigeria that has more than 250 ethnic groups. So how do we balance our awareness messages around digital protection, digital awareness, smartphone usage to be culturally appropriate at the same time locally relevant to older adults? So it's kind of very, very complex. In West African countries like Nigeria, Ghana, and Senegal, in 2013, there was a study that was conducted which indicated that older adults are very scared of using technology because it has some actually indicated that some older adults in countries like Nigeria consider it like it comes from someone that wants to monitor them, like they are monitoring their movement, probably they are monitoring what they are doing over time. So it's a huge concern. So me as a young person, I consider it like a huge task on my own part to actually carry my population along in order for them to actually benefit from what is happening and also for them to understand the safety and also the risk that actually accompanies the usage of digital technology. It comes with its own impact. One of those is the fact that it gives opportunity for them to connect with friends, family, and social group, and also engagement with government as well as advocate for their own needs and desires. So one of those one of the reports that was published recently by Amazon indicated that over 64% of older adults who are 60 years and above regularly visit online stores and pay through their card. So this actually comes with its own consequences. That is, they are mostly victims of cybercrime, including losing money and also their private information. Yes, they know their password and also they could protect their computer, but they trust easily. This set of population actually trust very easily, especially in countries like Nigeria, whereby we so much value our older adults. So we give them respect, we prostrate, they sing songs to us, they give us words of wisdom. But sometimes we've had a lot of individuals who use that as an opportunity to actually exploit older adults. and get into their home, into their computers, get into their digital technology. So, I mean, this actually skewed, is mostly skewed to those that actually have access to it. So in all of these, some of those things we've been doing, which is very, very impactful in where I come from in Nigeria, is the fact that we have digital technology for older adults, which, I mean, health technology. I work at the Chief Sonali Anini Geriatric Center, which is the first in West Africa sub-region. Why? Because most existing geriatric services in the West African region are mostly around unit services and often embedded with family medicine. So for us, it's a stand-alone geriatric center, which actually provide direct services only for older adults. And we have diverse range of services, including geriatricians that are trained to provide services for older adults. Currently, we are providing primary healthcare services for older adults residing in rural communities. So now, in terms of health technology, we've infused technology into our services by giving access to older adults opportunity to remind them of their clinic appointments, their medication, as well as for them to actually come for their clinic follow-up. So it's been very, very effective. And over time, we've actually also infused virtual reality. And this is being led by one of our friends who is an occupational therapist in Nigeria, that is Adekunle. And currently we have ongoing, like an online university for older adults in rural communities, which is being led by the University of the Third Age. So some of these services are going on, and the Nigerian Senior Citizen Center, which I understand I've actually presented at this meeting, have been collaborating with telecommunication companies, and like we have MTN and several other individuals, and there have been a lot of promising opportunities whereby older adults will have their home banking operation plan, whereby they will have a protected access to their own banking, as well as their money will be protected. And the whole goal of all of this is to ensure that there is digital safety net for older adults, and there is protection for them to actually live a healthy life without panicking, without anxiety. So there is an ongoing digital awareness for older adults across rural communities through the Nigerian Senior Citizen Centers. So it's a gradual process, and I'm glad this is happening in my own time, and I'm very glad because I'm part of all of this initiative. So what do we want, and what can we do in all of this? We must address the gap and challenges that prevent older persons from benefiting from the digital transformation. This is from the World Economic Forum in 2001, which says, how can we ensure digital inclusion for older adults? We must also recognize the age diversity of these broad and diverse cohorts by ensuring that adoption rate varies by age, ethnicity, education, computer literacy, and cognitive capacity and income. So in addition, we must develop measures. I mean, I think Pass It On Network is a very good platform for this sort of open conversation around developing measures to addressing emerging new risk of misinformation, cybercrime, safety, and privacy issue to create a more inclusive digital future for everyone. So digital inclusion needs to make participation for all ages technically and practically possible by ensuring that digital inclusion for older adults means overcoming one of those 5 barriers, that is access, installation of safe technological application in terms of knowledge sharing and awareness, designs of some of these applications, as well as trust. So in African region, we must, it's one of those issues we've been actually clamoring for in terms of provision of high speed, which is low cost for those residing in rural communities, and also low cost internet as well as device, along with installation support, and also ensuring that some of these services older adults are trained to use them. And consumer needs some digital literacy, which many of us have been mentioning over time. So on this note, I would like to say thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bemiga. That was terrific. Thank you. We really appreciate that. And the thought of how complex it is with 250 ethnic groups and what's culturally appropriate for one or another just complicates it all so profoundly. So, but thank you very much. So, Asna, we're going to play a little of a video, I believe, from about one of our members in Western Australia, Sheena Edwards.
Thanks, Gemma. And now to our campaign rewarding the people making our suburbs a better place. 7 News wants you to nominate and honour local champions. Tonight, the group helping seniors stay connected.
There's no shortage of knowledge and wisdom in this classroom, but these students are still eager to learn.
Absolutely.
Sheena Edwards set up Switched On Seniors 10 years ago after receiving an iPad and discovering she had no idea how to use it.
My kids were overseas and interstate, and I had nobody to teach me.
So she went looking for someone who could.
I started the group in the hope that somebody would come and teach me. But of course that isn't what happened, and I became the teacher knowing really very little.
A decade on, and Sheena has now taught hundreds of seniors to navigate their devices, guiding them through what to purchase and how to set them up. From the basics,
Find Your Notes app,
right through to avoiding scams.
we show them how to pick them, show them how to look for what will tell them that it's a scam.
One of the other great things about Switched On Seniors is the one-on-one support offered by volunteers. If participants have a specific question, they can get it answered.
We also show them how to fill in forms, how to use their email, how to look at their bank statements, all that sort of stuff. Everything you need today, because it's all done by technology.
If you or someone you know is making a difference, like Sheena and Switched On Seniors, we want to hear about it. Keeping seniors connected, one click at a time. Gemma Veroni, 7 News.
It's too bad Sheena isn't here so we could applaud her. She did was awarded the Senior of the Year award in Western Australia in 2020. And you know what I love about that video and what she's done is the self-organizing, self-empowering quality of what happened there. And to me, that's the model. But maybe, Richard, if you will do the honors of talking to us from California about what you've been up to. And
so can you see my screen?
We do.
Good. Okay. So thank you. And I must say that what I've heard so far from India and Nigeria and Australia, all of which echo exactly the themes of the why this is important, what the barriers are, what's going on. So this is really now a movement toward global digital inclusion, because when we started, that wasn't the case. So let me just introduce myself. I am located in Santa Clara County in California. You can see it there in the lower right-hand corner. It's the one of 9 counties in the San Francisco Bay Area. It's the southernmost. It's about 30 miles south of San Francisco. It's probably best known for being Silicon Valley, and it's the home of Google and Apple and Facebook and a lot of the companies that have built the technology. And when people think of Silicon Valley, I think they think of bright young techies, Steve Jobs, and so forth. But in fact, this is one of the largest counties in California. It's the 6th largest county with a population of 1.9 million people, of which 285,000, about 15%, are older adults. And one of the things that is interesting and I think distinctive about this county is that it's quite diverse ethnically and culturally. Nearly half the population is Asian, Chinese, Vietnamese, Korean, Indian Americans. I'm a minority group here as a white non-Hispanic, just a third of the population, another 15% Hispanic, 3% African American. And in addition, 40% of the population of this county was not born in the United States. And So, there's a very large variety of languages spoken even in this one county. So that's the environment that I live in. Let me just, I've been at this for 30 years, so actually more than that. So let me just give a quick history of the digital inclusion programs in the United States. So pre-COVID, from 1990 to 2020, it was a nice thing to do. The idea of, let's get Granny on a computer so she can see pictures of her grandkids, let her feel relevant. And when I started, we're talking about 33 years ago, a third of a century, there was no World Wide Web, had not yet been invented. There was no broadband. We were using something called dial-up modems at 256 bits per second. There were no smartphones. So if you wanted to get online, you had to learn to use a computer, and the computers weren't nearly as friendly as they are today. We were using something called dumb terminal interfaces. You had to take a 6-week course in a computer lab. It was a much more challenging environment, and the number of seniors who were online was probably in the single digits. But there was a group of older adults who really were interested and wanted to participate. And so I helped to found an organization called SeniorNet out here in California, but it was a national movement. And our key, a little bit like what we saw in Australia, it was seniors teaching other seniors. It was a volunteer-run program. We had over 250 centers that we set up all over the U.S. And we found that some of the best instructors were not super experts, but people who had just themselves learned how to use a computer and who remembered how, the challenges that were involved. And so, we did that for many years, and life went on. And then, post-COVID, in when COVID hit, we suddenly it became an urgent to do thing, it was doubly the fact that seniors were doubly isolated, partly because they were the most vulnerable medically, and secondly, even though 30 years had passed, still a very large percent. Many seniors, over half of the seniors were online, but they still lagged significantly behind younger people. And so starting around 2020, I heard this new concept of digital inclusion. It was the idea that that we heard earlier, that much of society had moved online. And, if you wanted to do things like call a ride from an Uber, or you wanted to do banking or order groceries, you kind of needed to be digitally literate. And so the challenge really became much more important. So I helped kind of start a new round of programs. And I'm going to talk about 3 that have happened in the last few years. And these are all government-funded programs. One is called CHAT, and I'll talk more about these. The second, ATT, Access to Technology. And the third, which is a federal program, the Affordable Connectivity Program. These are all major, well-funded projects that have really made a big difference. So we'll start with CHAT. This is a program that is funded by the California Department of Aging, and it stands for Connections, Health, Aging, and Technology. It was launched in 2020 at the beginning of the COVID by the California Department of Aging, and it has involved distributing 4,000 iPads statewide through what are known as area agencies on aging, which are local entities in each county that help support a variety of programs that help older adults. And approximately 215 of those iPads were here in Santa Clara County. And in order to qualify, you had to be 60 years or older, living alone, which I think was maybe not a great idea, because there are people who live with others who still needed it and did not currently own a tablet. So these tablets were distributed, and they would get them in the mail with a welcome packet, but these are largely people who didn't know how to use them. So then after they received their iPad, they would get a call, a telephone call from a support center to say, did you get your iPad? Do you have questions? And then give them help with a very simple initial setup, the things you had to do to make it work, which is a Gmail account and an Apple ID. And then they were invited to participate in a 5-week online iPad Essentials class to get to know the iPad, introduction to the internet, using email, apps, and as others have said, the importance of being safe online. And then after that, they were invited to join something called Senior Planet, which is a national community of online older adults. And so that program was sort of the first step. And then a much larger program started more recently. The state of California allocated $50 million distributed through the counties specifically to promote digital inclusion for older adults. So this was a really substantial amount of money. The program started this year in 2023 and will run through 2024. And the money was allocated based on population, and Santa Clara County received $2.1 million, which is, I think, more money than when I was with SeniorNet. We had to do all the work we did nationally. So it's a substantial amount of money. And our goal here is for the county to provide training and access devices to as many as 2,000 county residents. So that program is underway. And the way it is working is the county, through a competitive bid project, gave grants to 7 different agencies throughout the county: senior centers, a Korean American center, a Portuguese American center, an Asian American center, and then some supporting organizations. And these are all providing access devices along with training and support, and then also help getting low-cost internet access, which I'll talk about a little more. And because this is such a diverse community, instruction through these programs is being offered in English, Spanish, Mandarin, Cantonese, Korean, Vietnamese, and Portuguese. So, just even in our one county, we're dealing with this issue of diversity. And then finally, the third program that really, I think, is making an enormous difference, something called the Affordable Connectivity Program, the ACP, because for many older adults, even if they can afford to buy an access device, a big barrier is that there's a monthly ongoing expense for connecting to the internet. And if you're low income, that can be really substantial. So as part of the response to COVID, the federal government, through something called the Federal Communications Commission, launched a program that provides low income households with a subsidy for internet. And here's the features. So if you qualify, you can get a subsidy of up to $30 a month for internet access. And fortunately, a number of the large internet providers develop programs that cost exactly $30 for basic internet access. So essentially, internet becomes free, as well as a discount for up to $100 for a smartphone or a tablet. And in order to be eligible, essentially, you need to be low income, enrolled in a government program like a Medicaid or these other programs, which really serve low-income Americans. And so it's based on household income. And the impact has been substantial. Up till now, over the last couple of years, almost 20 million Americans have now signed up for this program, which is approximately half of all of those who are eligible. About almost 4 million older Americans have signed up for the ACP, which is about 20. So the older adults represent about 1/5 of all of the subscribers. And in Santa Clara County, more than 23,000 older adults are now signed up for ACP. And one thing that's happened is all those digital inclusion programs that I described earlier are actively promoting this program, and because you have to apply for it and it's a little bit complicated. So there are lots of events that are going on now to help people to sign on. And finally, there are 2 big, even larger federal grant programs that are in development now that I think will continue to help this effort grow. One is called the BEAD program, which stands for Broadband Equity, Access, and Deployment. This will involve $42.45 billion to expand high-speed internet access, to fund planning, infrastructure deployment, and adoption in every state in the U.S. A lot of that's going to go to building what's called middle mile, stringing a lot of wires to rural areas that don't have good internet access. But the other program, called the Digital Equity Act, will provide $2.7 billion to promote digital equity and inclusion, which is really these kinds of programs that will teach people how to those who are not digitally literate, how to get online. So, what I've seen, what started as a kind of a small grassroots effort to teach, introduce older adults, now is becoming a little bit more mainstream. There's still lots of people to go. There's still lots of issues, but I think we've made some real progress. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Richard. That was a fantastic overview, and thank you to all our panelists. That was really great. I think when Richard and I first started speaking about all this a few years ago, things seemed somewhat depressing. Like there was so much to do, and it seemed so difficult to make a dent. But I think, as we've seen today, enormous progress has been made, and we should really be heartened by that. So what I'd like to do is quickly, we don't have that much time, so I hope everyone will keep their questions succinct. If you'll raise your digital hand, we'll call on you. And just as a starter question, maybe unless you have some specific question to ask of our presenters, how can we how in your communities might we break down the digital barriers to digital equity? What are the barriers that you see, and how might we break them down? Or ask a specific question. We have these wonderful panelists who are steeped in knowledge. So if you'll raise your hands, I see Asnat has her hand up, so we can call on Asnat to begin. Give her the chance for a change to ask a question.
Yeah, thank you, Bruce. Thank you, panelists. I have a burning question. There's so much money is being described here, pouring into all kinds of programs. And my question is, what is the definition of success? How do you know that this money is actually making a difference and is not being lost to some scams or any of those other things that you described?
Any of the panelists like to pick up on that? Sonali, Richard?
One of the things that, we've learned when we were doing the digital safety program was that how do you assess impact? You put out a program, you put in some money into it, but how do you assess that once you've done, let's say, a training or a workshop, how has that made an impact? So one of our core core approaches to anything for any program, not just digital, is that it's very important to have an impact assessment and have a monitoring and evaluation system in place. It's very important to do that. You need to speak to the people that you are, giving the training to those older people, and you need to also ask them, if after the workshop we have a pre and a post test. It's just a couple of questions, about 4 or 5 questions. We ask them, do you think the workshop was useful, for example? How long do you think the workshop should be? Were any of the topics not covered, what you were hoping, could be covered in the workshop? Do you think that more classes or training is required? How would you apply the knowledge that you have gained in that particular workshop or training, in your daily life? And is there anything that you would like to tell us that we are not doing, right, or we're not covering, for example, that we need to do? I think it's very, very important to really hear it from the people that you're doing it for, to do assessment on how successful or impactful, that particular, program or initiative is. So that'd be my take on that.
Thank you. Bemiga, did you have a response you wanted to give to that?
Yeah. So, I think Richard is raising his hand before I say what I want to say.
Go ahead. Please go ahead.
Okay, so what we did in Nigeria, which I found very interesting, is the fact that we have a community partnered committees, which involves older adults who are not recipients of our care. So these are more residing in local communities. So they are the one that gives us, and they are the one whose voices are more louder than some of us providing care, or probably those receiving care from us. So what we do most of the time is that at the middle of every of our intervention, there is always a meeting whereby we call it we call it open community meeting, whereby they tell us what is working well and what is not working well. So that actually gives us opportunity to actually improve on what we're doing within the community. Oftentimes, when we started the program, when we started geriatric program, when we started programs around health technology in terms of using applications to remind our older adults, we found out that most of our older adults, even with that, they don't see anything. So, I mean, they don't see it as very much important. But during those meetings and engagement with them, and then older adults participating in the development of the app, we found out that there is an increase and massive utilization of this app. So it's one of the things I think it's a lesson for us to actually involve older adults both in the development of the application technology and also throughout implementation. If probably they should, I mean, older adults should be part of designing of the protection platforms of this application.
Great answer. Thank you. Richard, did you have an answer you wanted to slip in there?
Just quickly, I agree with Sonali about the importance of pre and post testing, and having done this for a long time, I'm now comfortable that the great majority of people who come in and have the motivation to get one of these devices and take a class, they not 100%, but large portion of them will get it and will benefit. The people I worry about are those who don't show up at all, those who are really remain very isolated, who are not reaching, despite all the outreach efforts. And I'm not sure I know how to solve that problem, but I worry about those who we still have yet to reach, because we're still nowhere near 100%.
Great point, Richard. So Tom Model, you were the first to raise your hand after Asnat, so why don't you please introduce yourself and quick ask your question.
It's a comment. The work that I do related to older adults is to promoting interconnectivity, getting people to understand how to connect. And there are two issues involved. One is the technology issue, familiarity, comfort, and so forth, which have a lot of different factors involved. But the other piece is the human factors, which relates to the comfort issue, perhaps. And one of the things that I'm exploring is developing conversation circles, which would connect one small physical group of people meeting in a location with another location. And I'm exploring this currently with some people in the United Kingdom because of the similarity between the United Kingdom U3A local chapters and the village organizations in the United States, of which I have one here in Reading, Massachusetts. I mentioned this to Asnat, and the issue of the connection of small groups, 5 to maybe 15, perhaps at most people in 2 individual rooms, may seem just insurmountable. And I thought at one point it was, but I recently had some opportunity to explore how to do that with some combinations of perhaps a room which would be fairly well instrumented with cameras and speakers, and then just the use of cell phones, which have amazing capabilities in various ways, both to image a whole room by setting it up on a tripod and passing perhaps another one around to individual speakers. And as I said, I've mentioned this to Asnat. Richard, I'm not sure if we've talked about this in our little group that meets, but if anyone were interested in exploring this, and it's really an experiment, I would appreciate knowing about it. And Asnat, if I could make you the point of contact for that, and you could let me know if anybody else does. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom.
In the follow-up note that you're going to get in a few days, we'll list this and give you an opportunity to contact me or Tom directly to get this project.
One final point I want to make mention of, because it was brought up in the panelist discussions, is if you can bring people together in a room where they have the comfort of meeting in person and there are a few people that are technically capable, that is one way of beginning to grow the comfort and understanding of the technology in a group sense, having the immediate impact, yet the online connectivity. I'll let it go there.
A wonderful idea, Tom. Thank you. Valerie, you had your hand up.
It's just a couple of little things that I saw. Somebody wrote in the chat that technology isn't any good if you can't read or write. But actually, people who can't read or write can watch film. When I was in Uganda, there was a group there where most of the people over the age of 40 never learnt to read or write because there was a war in northern Uganda at the time, but they could see film. They could see pictures. Mm-hmm. So actually, the internet can help in a way that people who can't read or write can use it. And that's something I'm working on with creating ebooks. To Richard, I just wanted to say, there's an old saying, you can take a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. Not everybody will want to use the internet. I met a lady today, younger than me by far, about 30 years younger than me, but a grandma who said, I'm very happy to take photos of my grandchildren and talk to them, but I don't want to use this internet rubbish. So leave them be. They will live their own lives. And just one last thing, Nigerian gentleman whose name I can't pronounce. There is a Learn with Grandma group for Nigeria, and I'd very much like it if you would post your thoughts and presentation on the Learn with Grandma Nigeria group. And that's it, really. Well, the only other personal thing that I'd like to mention is that getting old is a bloody good idea. I'm 82 now, and I'm not giving up. So, remember that these are the precious years. These are the times when we can still grow, still learn, and still pass on our learning. We older people have got skills and knowledge that the young people need, and they have skills and knowledge that we can learn from them. So intergenerational learning is my big thing.
Thank you, Valerie. That was really great. Wonderful.
I just want to quickly mention one of my favorite studies is called The Wisdom of Non-Users. And it was about the fact that there was a group of people who consciously and intelligently decide they don't want to have anything to do with this newfangled technology and that we need to respect it. So I agree with that. I'm more worried about the people who would like to do it, but just don't have any clue as to how they would begin.
Well, do you think that one of the reasons that non-users don't use it is because the fear is so great of using it, not simply because they see it as silly, but also because there's just so much fear of what might happen?
I remember once, many years ago, doing a field trial. And this was with a group of people who were somewhat technically literate, but they hadn't been online. And somebody said, the first time I went online, I felt there was 10,000 people watching me make a fool of myself. Yeah. And, it is an unfamiliar world for a lot of people. And, the one lesson of having done this for 30 years that I found was the magic ingredient was what I call a friendly helping hand. To have somebody who will sit next to you and say, it's okay, you're not going to break it. You're not going to run into trouble. I'll just show you how to do it. And then, after a little while, once you get people over that hump of unfamiliarity and fear, then they tend to be just fine.
Yeah, that's so right. And, friends of mine created a program in England that worked with Holocaust survivors. When the program began 7 years ago, the average age was 87, and only 25% had ever seen a digital or used a digital device. Ultimately, most of the users used it, and the program 7 years later is still going on with people whose average age is 94. So, a lot can happen with a friendly hand. So I saw a couple of hands. Brian? You're muted, Brian.
I was wondering, probably Richard would know, there used to be a program called Cyber Seniors, which Best Buy was a part of. Is that still around?
Yes, it is.
Is it a good one?
I don't know a lot about it, but I know that they're one of the groups who are helping support the ATT program.
Great.
The biggest one in the US that anybody's interested in, it's really cool, is called Senior Planet. And they have lots of classes online and community activities. I would say that one of the things that the industry, the computer technology industry, has failed to do is to recognize that older people represent an attractive, underserved market. People who have the means and the time and who could really become good customers. And yet, I think it's because the tech companies are mostly made up of young people who develop products for one another. Older people tend to get left out.
Richard, I'm going to cut in just because we're running very short on time here, but thank you. Bemiga, I'm going to give you the last word and then switch it over to Asnat for administrative ending for us. So Bemiga, why don't you, I think you had a comment there to slip in.
Yeah, so what I want to say quickly is the fact that we have University of the Third Age who are doing amazingly well in Nigeria. When I say amazingly well, they go into local communities working with leaders and community elders in order to partner with them and also train older adults on how to use the technology. Quite all right. There are barriers, there are setbacks in terms of acceptability. As I mentioned in my presentation, there are some older adults who feel like someone is monitoring them. So why would I have to go into this? But unfortunately, it's actually undermining their access to opportunities in terms of healthcare, in terms of funding, money, and stuff like that. But anyway, it's a very great conversation. Thank you, Richard, for that insight, and Valerie for that. Thank you.
Well, thank you all three. That was just a great round of questions and answers and presentations. We deeply appreciate it. Asnat, I'll let you wrap it up, but thank you.
Yeah, all I can say is big thank you for the presenters. This is just a formality. We're going to formally close the meeting now, but we're going to sit here for another 15 minutes for all the different things that everybody wants to say, and I think there's a lot of it here. Just wanted to direct your attention to a feedback link that we have in the chat. Please let us know what was your experience like? What would you like to hear more of or less of? We are going to meet again in the next 50/50 on October 9th, same time. You're going to see an invitation in your mail in a few days. The topic is still under discussion, but it's going to be relevant to Passage Network, as they all are. And now we're going to go back to anybody who wants to say what surprised you, what did you notice, what are you going to do differently after hearing what you heard today, and here we go. Moira.
Yes, Moira. I'm very interested to hear our friend from Nigeria and what he's thinking about Elon Musk's sally into Africa, because he has said, Elon Musk, that he's going to deploy his Starlink satellites and it's already in Nigeria, Rwanda, and Mozambique, and 23 more countries by the end of this year. What do you know about it? What do you think about it?
Yes, I know about it. So interestingly, the newly inducted Minister for Information is a very good friend of the Nigerian Senior Citizen Center and a friend of mine as well. So Starlink is currently in Nigeria. Unfortunately, very few people can have access to it because it's extremely expensive. It's over $700, and then they pay more than $200 per month. So converting that to Nigerian currency is huge. And don't forget, poverty level in Nigeria, more than 60 or 70%, have access to, spend more, up to $1 per day. So where would they get the money from? So it's like more of, it's skewed to some certain population of people. But the only thing I think Elon Musk should gradually start considering is the fact that community partnership with elders and leaders in order to provide internet access to communities. Even if we have one Starlink that could capture a whole rural community, the goal is to have access and not provide. Don't just provide, but let people have access. It's a different thing to have this available, but people don't know how to use it, or probably they don't have access to it. So it's skewed in terms of accessibility. Many of us that are deciding that are working with government cannot even afford it, not to talk of someone living in rural community.
Oh, excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, AI, it's the latest thing now. Unfortunately, many things are going wrong in terms of usage of AI for provision. I think Sonali will have something, because I know you touched on it briefly.
Thanks, Vega. AI, like you said, it's a tricky space. It's one of those things that you don't want to go there, but you are curious enough and you want to go there. And it has its uses. But the scary part of it is, of course, the security part of it, and also the substitution, the fear of AI is huge, even in the employment sector. Even in the film sector, I think that's is quite prevalent. That how far are we willing to use AI to go forward? Where do we draw the line? And that's something that honestly, I think over time we're just going to find out, because it's a very uncertain space right now. It's welcome in some places, but it's uncertain. So I think we just need to wait and watch how that turns out, because like I said, we don't want human beings being replaced, but we do want to move forward, with technology, and want to make things easier and faster. So it's a tricky space.
Yeah. Tom has something.
Jacqueline, you have your hand up?
Yeah, it's something completely different. But before we sign out, I wanted to remind everybody here that the 2nd of October is the UN's International Day of Older Persons. And New York has an excellent program, and Vienna, we're just getting our program together. Ours is on abuse against older persons, how we can prevent it, and yeah. But I'll send the program to you, okay, when we have it finalized. Just wanted to mention that.
Great, thank you. Tom, you have your hand up.
Yes, I'm not sure how many are familiar with what I'm about to comment on, but I just would like to just raise it. We're talking about digital literacy, and at a very fundamental level, allowing people to connect using the internet. And the internet has gone through what are now 3 stages. One is the initial web, which was just to allow people to connect via the internet. What's called Web 2.0, which was the enabling of applications, which then allowed connectivity and doing transactions and doing what we're doing here. And now there's an explosion of Web 3.0 using what's called blockchain technology, which has some enormous implications, and I think will be developing very quickly. And the critical point for this group in 2 ways is, one, it will enable us to maintain total control and privacy of our interactions with the internet. And the other, it will lead to organizational constructs, which are called decentralized autonomous organizations, and something called non-fungible tokens, which is all of this cyber money kind of stuff. That's one very limited example. But it's probably no more than 10 years away, and it will take care of a lot of the issues that are a plague to older adults. But of course, this issue will be enabling them to make use of it, although I think that may become simpler as well, and I'll leave it at that.
Hi, my name is Lisa, and this is the first time I've been here in this group. I'm a director of a senior center in the greater Boston area. And I think actually all of the different ways that we can connect with each other and assist each other, if done in combination, actually work well for folks that, you know, being able to have different ways to try to solve a problem always is a good thing. And as long as there's still some contact in there, it's not all about machines and digital and non-personal connections, as long as somebody is touching base and making connection in it as well. I think all of those things are improvements and ways to give us information and help each other, you know, when you can't be there and you can't do it in person. So everything in moderation thought as well.
Thank you, Lisa.
Mm-hmm.
Does anyone have any experience with, maybe Doug, you do, some experience with assistive devices that are being used in the home?
We are really just starting to see that come about right now. So we haven't had any really direct experience with too much of it as yet, but you know, we know that it's coming because we see you know, companies knocking on our door, you know, trying to get our information. I mean, we work with, you know, 200 clients almost every day, and largely they're in their home. So, you know, we need to be careful. I was the one that mentioned AI just because I think it's, you know, it's just coming so fast. And I think we're a little like the people that we are teaching, you know, how to use electronic devices, that we're nervous about all of this, where somebody who's not in their 70s or maybe in their 50s is not nearly as nervous as we are. It's going to happen. People are going to make mistakes. We need better guardrails. We need a lot of different things. But you know, if businesses are going to make money on this, they see it and they're trying to get their foot in the door first. It's so important, and there's just so much of it going on. And I was thinking specifically about how would you ask AI to help us structure an education program that people would use, people with these set of, you know, criteria. So there's lots of different ways to use it, but man, I don't see it 10 years down the road. I see it 2 or 3 years down the road for a lot of things, just because that's how fast things are changing right now. If you belong to any AI newsletters, I don't understand half of it. All I'm seeing is that this is new, this is new. Companies are getting billion-dollar funding. And again, it could end up being like what the internet was at the very beginning, where they crashed, but it's happening. You know, we can't ignore that.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the concerns, and I can't really speak to it, is the integration into medical records, into your doctor's offices, as well as into your finances. So, and you know, what will physicians begin to act upon predictive AI to treat, and how will that go?
Mm-hmm. AI is a big topic, and I'm noting to myself that maybe this should be one of the topics for one of the future 50/50s. So maybe we don't want to get into this so quickly now. Stay really with the digital equity that we've heard today. And we're getting very close to the end here.
If I may make a comment, just I have to leave. We're talking about digital inclusion today, in a sense, and I think the flip side of that is what the real issue is digital exclusion based on financial and cultural issues. And by the cultural, I mean age as well as other aspects of culture. And that's where the real barriers will be. And that will require collective action on the part of government and individuals and groups like we have here. I've enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom.
Last kind words from Brian.
Well, actually, is the blending of the AI with this. How much do we need to learn? How much do older people need to learn about AI to stay current, to be included?
Yeah.
That is going to be a topic for another 50-50.
Yeah,
it's so complex, you know, there are millions of results if you put it in Google.
Yeah.
And we have only 1 minute left.
Yeah,
so
because a lot of things are unreal. So many things are not real. So
yeah. Well, I want to thank our panelists. One of them already went to sleep because it was really late there in India. Thank you very much for being here. It was I wish we had 2 more hours for this, but we don't. So we'll see you again on the 9th of October. And please don't forget to respond to the to our survey. And Moira, you have.
I just wanted to say something. You know, at Pass It On Network, we learned to applaud virtually, and I feel so thrilled about this meeting this evening that I'd like to applaud, and that was the way we did it. And remember, it was Kerry Henley who taught us that. So let's applaud. Those were our speakers. Were just wonderful. Thank you so much. That was great.
Bye.